Okay, wonderful. Well, I wanted to give an opportunity to those schools that we still are waiting to join in the session. But I want to say good morning to everyone. My name is Rosa, and I'm with Liberty Science Center. And I wanted to show you just a little bit about Liberty Science Center for those of you who do not know about our place. It is located in Jersey City, New Jersey, right in the heart of Liberty State Park. It's a wonderful science center that features a lot of hands-on exhibitions, and we strive to teach about a lot of current topics, science that is critical, but also engage the kids to do their own investigation. So I'm hoping that this will bring everyone a little closer to Liberty Science Center. And at the end of the program, we'll show you how you can connect with us besides having another session with us, but just on the norm when you want to connect with us and talk to us. So why don't we begin the program? Today's program is all about the heart. Yay, Heart Week. And we are going to be talking a little bit about looking at from the outside of the heart and diving all the way in. So one of the first things that you are actually going to be able to do is at the end of the program, you should have gotten a packet or a document. It's called a post-activity connection. With the post-activity connection, what you can do with that is build your own stethoscope. Now, stethoscopes are very, very cool. They're actually a very simple piece of technology that is used very critically by the medical world. Now, I do have a sample here, a couple of samples of what a stethoscope look like. But when we think about the stethoscope, that is to listen not only to our lungs that are inside our body, but we also can listen to our heart. And doctors and nurses use that to try to figure out if your heart is sounding normal or behaving normal, or if there may be something that they should investigate a little further. And so when we think about the stethoscope, we need to think about the history. Believe it or not, the first stethoscope was actually designed by this young man behind me here. And he is a French scientist, inventor, and he goes by the name of René Lanier. And René actually invented the first stethoscope, which is simply a tube that you can place on the person's chest or against their body and place your ear on the other side. And just like if you were trying to whisper in your neighbor's ear, you kind of cup your hands, right? And that's going to concentrate the sound that's being made, and that sound will travel to your ear. And if you listen carefully, you can hear what's actually being produced. So the first stethoscope was actually simply a hollow tube. And this hollow tube allowed the sound to travel up, and then with a little bit of education and understanding of what regular heartbeats are supposed to sound like and what lungs are supposed to sound like, they were able to diagnose problems. And hopefully that'll lead to treatment. But that happened. The first stethoscope was actually designed in the 1800s. Later, the design that we know today as this one here, the normal stethoscope that you see medical people wear, has a flexible tube, two plush rubber pieces that you can stick into your ears, and of course, this part actually is called the diaphragm. It's a very thin piece of material that will allow it to rest nicely against the skin and help amplify the sound, because it has actually these interesting shaped metal pieces attached to it. That's why it's a little cold sometimes when you feel it against your skin. But never worry. these are actually going to allow the sound that your heart makes, that lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub sound, to travel up the flexible tubing to the earpieces into your ears so that you can hear what's going on. Now, the amazing thing about this is that when we look at the modern day stethoscope, which is a word that can be complicated to say, but when we look at the modern day stethoscope, what we can see is that it was actually over time, the design, the original design in the 1800s, got changed, adapted, and in about 1850, an Irish inventor by the name of Arthur Leonard actually developed something that is similar to Renee's invention. However, it had a flexible tubing to it. And this is where it leads to the modern day stethoscope. So one of your assignments at the end of this program is to build your own stethoscope. And with that in mind, listen to your heartbeat and get familiar with your inner music. Now, when we think about the stethoscope and all the cool things that come from it and all the amazing things that we can see, well, there's a couple of interesting components. I don't know if you recall, but there was an interesting character in Disney movies by the name of Scuttle. And Scuttle would actually pick up Prince Eric's foot and place it on against his ear to see if the prince was alive or not. And you can kind of see Scuttle in the background there doing his thing. Now, was that weird? Maybe. But he wasn't really far off the mark, because there are different places that you can actually find or listen or feel for the heartbeat. Now, before I continue with this program, I do want to just get a quick assessment of what you know. I'm going to take a moment of pause here, and I'm going to ask you to vote. We're going to do a little poll, and it should pop up on your screen. And the first question that we're going to ask you is, what do you think the heart is shaped like? So go ahead and answer it. By the way, you kind of got a little cheating because of my animation at the beginning of the session. But go ahead and answer that. And I'll see the results through the connection. And everyone needs to vote. It'll take a moment or so. But think about the heart shape. I see some people are saying it's a football shape. Excellent. We'll get a few more answers. All right. Some of them are coming in just now. Wonderful. So the heart is an amazing organ. And in this program, we're going to make sure that we look at that. Okay, so I think we've given everybody about a little bit close to a minute. And what we have is the predominant answer seems to fall 50-50 between egg shape and football shape. And I'm thinking that you're all looking at that oval shape that the heart has. Okay, so neither of these answers are wrong because they both deal with the overall shape, which is oval. So excellent job, excellent job. I'm going to ask you one more question. We're going to put on actually two more questions. And the next question is, does your heart have fat in it? So go ahead and tell me what you think about that. I'll come back to giving you a little bit more fleshed out answers. All right. This is more of a 50-50. You either have it or you don't. Okay, so we're going to give just a few more seconds so that we can see what the results are. Okay, we're going to close that session off. And all of you said that yes, the heart has fat on it. Oh, let's do one more question. Let's actually do the next question. There we go. Now, this question is, do you think everyone has the same heart rate? So take a moment here. We're going to give you about maybe 20 seconds or so, maybe a little bit more than that, depending on what the answers come back. Okay. So make sure everybody gets to vote. There we go. And we're going to get ready to close that session down. All right. So the resounding 100%, everybody says that no, the heart rate is not the same for everyone. Okay, we're going to close out of this session and we're going to continue with our discussion featuring our friend Scuttle. So Scuttle was looking at trying to see whether the prince was alive or not. And he was really close to finding that answer. If he just moved to the top of the foot, he would have found it. So there are different places where you can feel your heartbeat. So do this with me, please. Take your 2 fingers, never your thumb, because that's actually one place where you can feel a pulse from. So take your 2 fingers, right? Your index finger would be, you can take 1 or 2, but take the 2 fingers, put it by your temple, right? So you can feel a vessel pulsing, okay? Another place where you can do it is by the jaw. If that one's not very easy to find, you can actually go right the carotid artery, and it should be between the bony structure of the throat and that one muscle, and you can kind of place your fingers gently in between that area, and that should be actually a stronger place to feel your pulse. Another area, an artery, actually these are all arteries we're finding. Another area that you can find is in between the muscle of your arm and the bone. You place your 2 fingers there, you can find your pulse in this location, the brachial artery. You can find it right between, if you follow along the lines of your thumb towards your wrist. Again, you want to find it between a bone and a muscle because you want to compress it near a sturdier object so that you can feel those pulse points going. Okay. Another place, you can not follow me in this, but the lower extremities, the lower part of your body, you can find it. You can find it by your inner thigh. You can find a pulse point behind your knee. You can find a pulse point right at your ankle, towards the inner part of your ankle, not the outer part of your ankle, the inner part, and then on top of the foot. So if Scuttle just moved his head slightly to the top of Prince Eric's foot, he would have indeed found himself a pulse, knowing that the prince was okay. All right, so the pulse is essentially the pushing of blood from the heart. And you are absolutely right. Everyone has a different pulse rate, how fast the blood is going to move through the arteries, and it will be faster for a newborn. And eventually, if you're healthy and a healthy adult, it should slow down to about an average of being in between somewhere along the 60. You'll feel it 60 times, that blood pushing through that artery. It'll push 60 times through that vessel, or it can push a little bit under 80. So that's a nice, healthy heart rate. Now, you can absolutely change your heart rate by exercising. Yeah, and sometimes changing your heart rate is actually a good thing because that's how you exercise and keep your heart healthy too. So if you just want to just very quickly stand up, take a moment to stand up, we're going to find one of those places. You choose, take those 2 fingers, you choose where you want to follow your pulse. And you kind of want to, almost like the beat of the music, see if this beat is nice and constant and regular, or if it's a little bit faster, like rock and roll music, or if it's like heavy metal, you know, blah, 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 blah. That's no good unless you're younger. So what we want to do is we want to see the rhythm of our pulse. So find a spot where you can, you know, pick up your pulse rather easily. Remember, we had at least 8 spots. I'm going to pick my temporal lobe, my temporal artery. Put it right here. There we go. I'm getting a nice rhythm to my music or my heart music. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe yours is slightly different. And now that we're standing and we feel that there's a rhythm to our music, to our heart, let's see if we can change that rhythm, make it a little faster. So everybody just do some running in place. Nice running in place. If you're feeling energetic, you can jump up and down as quickly as possible. So exercise is one way that we can increase our heart rate. Sometimes our heart rate increases simply because we're reacting to something, like we're scared, right? So we're going to increase our heart rate now. Everybody stop. Put your 2 fingers against the same spot and see if your rhythm has gotten faster. You can even bop to this, your own inner music. And what you'll find is, yeah, indeed. So exercise is one of the things that the medical professions ask you to do, not only for your whole body health, but for your heart health. That's one way to keeping your heart active and healthy. Okay, now we're going to move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about going into and looking at the heart itself. Before we actually see a physical heart, you actually have to go through skin, and you have to go through the bone, and if you tap on your chest, that bone right there, that's called the sternum. Okay, that's that long bone. It kind of merges all your rib cage, all your individual rib cage together into this one solid piece. And the rib cage protects your lungs and your heart. That's one first layer of protection. But if you break the bone in a controlled manner, right, open it up, what you'll see are some pretty pink lungs, and nestled in between those lungs will be your heart. But it won't look exactly like you think it should. And that's because there is this wonderful protective pouch. This pouch, I'm going to come back in. This pouch is the one that you see right here. This is the pericardium. And it's the pouch that kind of encloses the heart in a pocket so that it can beat. And when it beats, it slightly does a little twisting. And when it beats, it has no friction. No friction. So we can beat very smoothly. And that protective area is called the pericardium, that little pouch. So you have to actually open the pericardium to get to look at the heart. Now, we do have a real image of the heart here, and I do have a couple of great models to show you. So let me go do that right now. Now, so far, if you do have any questions, you can just type it in and we will answer it as we go. No worries about that. But let me show you what the heart can look like. I have one here on my document camera. I'm going to switch views. So here is a heart. This is actually a human heart. This heart was donated, and it was donated because it's actually a really interesting teaching tool. We'll get into that a little bit later. But the heart actually is this oval shaped. So if you said egg or football, you were in the right direction. It is definitely oval, not necessarily like the Valentine heart like this, right? Not like this at all. But it has that oval shape to it. And the interesting thing about the heart is when it is in the body, in its normal state, and actually you can see a little bit of pericardium on the outside of the heart right here that is still preserved. When it's in its normal position in the body, it's actually sitting at an angle like this so that it takes up more space on one side of your lungs than the other. And when you see it, when you open the heart and you see it inside the body, there's actually a segment that you see. You usually see the right side of the heart. Now, I have a different heart here just to give you a little bit more of a color distinction, okay? So we have the left side of the heart, we have the right side of the heart. So when you're looking at the heart in a person's body, it's actually sitting like this in an angle. So you see the oval shape to it. And the right side is facing up. It's facing out towards your sternum. And the right side of the heart gets deoxygenated blood. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And the left side is kind of usually sitting towards your spine. Okay? So we have here a heart with some fat on this model, but let's look at the actual heart here. We have a real heart, and you can see all the fat that covers it. And fat is yellow. Now, you might think fat is very, very negative. Fat is a bad thing. But I'm going to tell you that fat is actually very important, not only for the heart, but for your brain. You just need to choose between good fats and bad fats, choosing what type of foods you're going to put in your body. So nutrition is important. But fat around the heart does a couple of things. So we have here fat on the heart. Yes, it does have it. It's there for a few purposes. It's there for insulation. It's there for protection. It's there for energy. What I mean by this is that it's going to protect the heart if it should be jostled around. You do have that pericardium on the outside, also being a layer of protection. And of course, your rib cage is a layer of protection. But the fat does protect the heart. It also, because of, remember those pulse points, right? There's a lot of force going through the arteries in the heart and in your all over your body, but specifically the heart. So that those arteries that cover the heart have to be protected from possible twisting or turning. So the fat protects each of those arteries. So when you look at a heart, about 80% of the heart is covered in fat. And 20 is what you can see as red muscle that may be peeking through. I mentioned food. Food is also very important. So when you're looking at food, what you put into your body is going to give you energy. And when we think about energy, that is the gram, 1 gram of nutrient that you put into your body will be converted to calorie of energy. So when we're looking at about carbohydrates or proteins or fats, we see that fats actually give us 1 gram of fat will give us 9 grams of calories of energy. So that's a lot of energy for an object that works very hard and needs quite a bit of nutrients, not only oxygen, but nutrients as well. So we see that the fat is there to provide energy, okay? And it's a localized fat. So anytime the heart needs energy, it can pull from that fat. And when you are born, you don't necessarily have that fat coverage, but as you grow older, yes, the fat will start to form around the heart. Now, there is no connection between, someone being unhealthy or someone being healthy and the amount of fat on their body. No, not at all. In fact, it really is dependent on your age, but there is no connection to having all this fat on the heart and possibly it making you sick. None at all. So what I have behind me is an actual image of a heart inside of someone's body that we took a still shot of, because we do have a surgical program here. And what you can see is that really yellow material. That is what fat looks like, and I'm sure you've seen it on other foods, but it's a bright yellow. So what we need to then think about is the vessels that allow this blood to flow from the heart. Okay, and there's different types of vessels. So what we're going to concentrate on this part is understanding the differences between the vessels. We have the top one, which is made up of many layers, and those are very distinctive parts of an artery. An artery is a very thick and muscular vessel, and it has to be because of all the pressure, all of that force that's being brought out from the heart to try to go to the rest of the body as fast as possible. In fact, one little red blood cell will travel throughout the body very, very quickly, okay? And it'll take only seconds for that red blood cells to travel throughout the body. But that's how much force. So those vessels, arteries, that carry oxygenated blood need to be very muscular in order to deal with the pressure, the high pressure that's going to flow through them. The bottom one here is a vein. Now, what's really cool about this image is that you see that there's a little flap, and that flap is a valve. And typically, veins have valves. Valves are essentially one-way doors so that blood can only flow in one direction and not come back, okay? And it happens to be that in the heart, we'll see some valves as well. So there are valves in vein, and they tend not to be as muscular. And that's because the pressure is different. Where you have high blood pressure or high pressure flowing through an artery, you have very much lower pressure going through a vein. Okay, so there's differences. And so because there are different types of pressure blood going through it, you're not going to have the same structure. So veins have valves, and they're not as muscular, and arteries don't have valves, and they're very muscular. So here's an image that I have, and I want you to think about it. I want you to think about it in your classrooms. I have two images of blood flowing. Now, if you look very closely, these images will give you an idea of which type of vessel they may be. So in your classroom, I want you to just take a guess. If you think the image at the very top is an artery. And keep that in your mind. Discuss it with your fellow students. Okay, now the image at the bottom. Could that be an artery, or is that a vein? So you have to decide, is the top image an artery or a vein? Or is the bottom image an artery or a vein? And the answer is the top image is actually an image of an artery. So you can see how that beat, that flow, that pressure. You can distinctly see it here. So an artery has a more distinctive beat because of the pressure from the heart pushing that blood through. Here at the bottom, I want you to notice something very distinct. The blood, there's still a constant flow of blood, except at this end point. At this end point, you kind of see a little pooling of the blood, and that's okay, because that's showing us that there's a valve there, that some of that blood may flow back down, but it won't go back all the way because that valve is closed. So blood is allowed to flow through, and then once it goes through, it closes behind it, and this is one indication So this is what medical diagnosis, when you're looking at scans or imaging, what you have to pay attention to, those subtleties. So if you guess at the top was an artery, you're absolutely correct. And the bottom must be a vein. Okay? Excellent. Now, we're going to continue through this topic because I want to make sure that we are on time. But let's go back to our polling and see if we can ask you a couple of more questions. Okay, so here's a question about the color of veins. Are they actually blue like they say or like we see in our textbooks? So go ahead and give me your answer. Some of you gave me answers very quickly. That means you absolutely know. You feel 100% confident of the results. I'll give you a few more minutes. Just not minutes, a few more seconds. Okay, I'm getting some other results. And we are going to go ahead and end the polling. So we do have some people, we have about 20% of the audience that said yes, that they are blue just like in our textbook. And we have about 80% of you that said no, they're not blue. And in fact, blood comes in different colors, but not blue. And that's actually an interesting one. So why do we see it blue? Why do the textbooks make it blue? In fact, here in my model, why is it even colored blue? Well, it's colored that way so that you can see the difference, so that you can keep it in mind. Okay, so you can keep it in mind that there's a difference between the vessels. And if they colored it all the same, then it would be harder for you to learn. Unfortunately, they also kind of put that image in your head that the blue, that our blood is blue or somehow our veins are blue. And actually veins and arteries, when you look at it in a human body, they're very similar looking. They're more on the pale side than actually a solid color. So let's see if I take some questions. The one question was asked is, why can our, and this is from Carly Brancini, I hope I pronounced her name right, why can our veins look blue in our wrists? That's a great question. So let me place my hand down. And it depends really on your skin tone and the light, the amount of light that you have in the room. So if I go very closely on my wrist, you might even see this blue color. Now, it appears blue because of how the light is hitting my skin, and the light then shines back into my eye, and the color that I'm seeing is blue. So it's actually because it's a play of light and the skin tone. So different skin tones will actually give a different appearance. But overall, the reason why you look at it is because inside the blood is actually darker, not a bright red, but more of a burgundy color or a deep red. And you have the vessel, this is actually a vein, and veins will appear blue. And this is why when they do models like this, it looks blue too. So the veins carry deoxygenated blood, and deoxygenated blood happens to be a burgundy. And the burgundy, with the layers of the vessel and your skin and the light as it enters, gives this appearance of blue. So great question. Next question that I see is, what actually pumps the blood through our body? Oh, that's a wonderful question. So I have the heart right here. So remember that human heart I have, right? The one that was donated because they wanted to teach people about what was going on. So I have a heart here, and normally your heart is actually about the size of a loose fist. So everybody make a fist. Okay, everybody make a fist. Not a tight fist, a loose fist. And your heart is about that size for your own body, right? So look around the room, you can see different the younger kids who are about the same age, about the same height, will have about the same fist size, and their heart will be about the same measurements. Overall, the heart weighs about, half a pound, which is the equivalent if you were to take 4 bananas and put them on a scale. Depending on the size of the bananas, you would get half a pound. Now, the parts that actually do the pushing of the blood is actually the left side of the heart. The left side of the heart is the left ventricle, and the left ventricle will actually squeeze. And as it squeezes, it pushes the blood through to the aorta. Let me use my other model here to show you. If I open the left side, now, just to let you all know, the left side is bringing in oxygenated blood. That means it's gone to the lungs, and it's bringing that oxygenated blood into the atrium up top through the mitral valve, right? And so when you hear the lub-dub, it's actually the valves opening and closing. Lub-dub, lub-dub, okay? So you have a valve here that it goes from the atrium to the ventricle will squeeze and it'll push it through another valve that's in here. I move these guys out of the way, and that's the aortic valve. And that'll go over to this beautiful, I like to call it candy cane. It's the aorta, right? So it's the aorta that leads to the rest of the body. These will go up to the head, to the arms, and then this lower branch here will go to the body. So when you're looking at what's actually pushing the blood through, it's the left side. So then what is the right side doing? It's not just being lazy. No. The right side is actually getting the blood that's coming from the body into the right atrium. And then that material goes from the right atrium to the right ventricle through a valve called the tricuspid valve. And it'll push it and go out to the lungs. So the right side takes the blood from the body that's filled with a lot of carbon dioxide, and it's going to push it to the lungs so that it can get oxygenated, okay? And that is what the right side is doing. So left side goes to the body, right side goes to the lungs. So let's see, do we have, yeah, excellent questions, everybody. Keep it coming. So what I'm going to continue to do is I'm going to move on to the next aspect, which is continuing a little quick talk about the arteries and veins, because there is something that has to bring them together at some point, right? How does the deoxygenated blood get to the veins? Well, it deals with this little branching. The little branching is the smallest vessels in your body allow the veins and the arteries to kind of exchange. And those are called capillaries. So capillaries are basically your bridging network. And when you think about which type of vessel you have more in your body, you actually have more capillaries than anything else. It's really amazing. But the veins will actually get narrower and smaller, right? And it'll join the capillaries. And there's capillaries surrounding the lungs, they'll exchange this waste material. Carbon dioxide gets out of the blood, oxygen goes in. Capillaries carry it to the arteries, excuse me, and then that's how it goes back to the heart and to the rest of the body. So this network you have 3 different types of vessels: arteries, veins, and capillaries. That's kind of the bridge work for all of this. Now, we already talked a little bit about the flow of blood through the heart, but I'll do it one more time very quickly. I'll just use my little marker here. We have a network, right? We have this trunk here, which is an atrium. The heart is actually hollow. It's a hollow, oval-shaped muscle, and it is going to be divided into 2 segments, a right side and a left side. the part that divides that is the septum, right? This larger muscle in the middle. But blood comes in from the body, enters the atrium, through the valve, that one-way door, into the right ventricle, up to another valve, and over out into what's called the pulmonary arteries. Then, when we look at the left side, after it gets oxygenated and it meets those capillaries, it comes back into the artery system, or it comes back into the capillaries, and then we go to the pulmonary veins, which are these in the back, these here in the back, and it comes into the left atrium through the valve, that one-way door, left ventricle up to another valve that goes out into the aorta, to the head, and to the rest of the body. Okay, that's the flow of material through blood through the body and to the lungs. So the last bit that I want to be able to cover is a little bit about the circulation. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a really cool component because circulation, your blood, your heart is such an amazing organ that we have to keep it healthy because it goes through, let me just show you very quickly here. It goes and covers from head to toe, from the very tops of your head to the teeny tiny bits in your toes. Your circulatory system touches every organ in your body so that it can give it all the nutrients it needs. And if we zoom in at the very top here, and I keep zooming in, you can see this amazing network. Okay, you can see the small branches, you can see the care, but also the heart, which is a muscle, it needs that nutrients too. So it will need its own supply of blood. And so when we look at the heart and we zoom in here, we can see that it's surrounded by both arteries and veins. And these that crown the heart are called the coronary arteries. Now, remember, I said at the beginning, just to give us a little closure, remember I said at the beginning that the heart is about the size of a loose fist. So let me hold this heart here, and you tell me whether it is actually an appropriate size heart. So I'm going to go back to the document camera. I'm going to hold it here. And here's one hand. Now here's two hands. Yeah, so this heart is actually a lot larger, And there's different diseases that can affect the heart. And one disease that did affect this one is actually, you can inherit it from family members. But this one actually makes the heart very large, makes it larger than it needs to be. And that's not a good thing. Hearts need to be a certain size so that they can push the blood through. Now, there are two questions I know that I still have to answer, so let me answer those here. And the question is, oh, thank you. Your students love it. Oh, excellent, excellent. So does the heart grow with us as we grow? Perfect question. And does it stop growing at a certain point? Yes. Yes. To both questions, absolutely. Unless your heart has a condition, like this condition is actually called hypertrophic heart. That means that the muscles of the heart in the ventricles get larger. And that makes the heart larger, and that makes the heart work less effectively. Another disease that can affect the size of the heart is if you have coronary artery disease. And that means that the arteries that surround the heart are not allowing enough blood to go through and get to the heart muscle. And the heart has to work harder. So that makes it even more muscular. And that's a problem because big, strong muscles don't necessarily mean that it's going to be a better pumping mechanism. In fact, your heart, a normal, healthy heart, will stay the same size. At a certain point, everything in your organ stops growing, and in your body stops growing. And unless that body part is diseased, if for some reason, that's the only reason why it would grow larger and not be as effective. So yes, your fetal heart as a little baby is this big, so it's pumping, pump, 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 very fast. But as it gets larger, it tends to beat less times a minute, and so therefore you have a slower heart rate, which would be a normal heart rate. Okay, so then why can I only see one kind of vein under my skin? That's a great question. So, why can I only see veins under my skin? That's a great question, and that's coming from Anonymous. So the reason why you can see veins under your skin is that veins tend to be more superficial. Remember, when we were looking for the places on our body that has that pressure going through it, those arteries, you have to actually put it, find it a little deeper. You have to press a little harder and kind of compress it near a solid object like a bone. So arteries tend to be a little deeper in the body, whereas veins tend to be more superficial or closer to the skin. So that's why you can see more blue on your body than you can see red, let's say. It's not that you cannot see it sometimes. There's areas where the skin is very fine, and if your pigment is a certain color, then you'll be able to see the red, probably little capillaries, but definitely not arteries as well. All right, if there's any other questions, I would love to take them. But I've come to the end of the program, and I've really enjoyed my time with you. I hope you did too. So if you are actually interested in more programs with Liberty Science Center, this is what you can do. We actually have, I'm going to change that there. We have different programs coming up. On October 21st, we have a program on squamata. So we'll have a reptile program for you for the elementary school at 11:30. But if you're interested in more electronic field trips, you can always go to our website, www.lsc.org, and you can find us. We're the electronic field trips page, or if you're interested in more surgeries and more medical stuff, we do have a live surgery program. So I hope you had a great time. Students, keep learning. Adults, enjoy yourselves. And remember, make sure your hearts are healthy because you have an inner rhythm and inner music that needs to shine. All right, that's the end of my program. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Have a great day. Unless there are any other questions, I'll stay on a few minutes to take any other questions. All right. Well, then I hope you all have a great day. And that's the end. Bye, everyone.